the twin that never was. My name is Camilla, and I need to tell you what happened to me 6 months ago. What I discovered about myself, about my family. It's changed everything I thought I knew about my life. It started with the girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with dark hair that hung in tangles around her pale face. I'd see her standing at the foot of my bed when I woke up at 2 a.m., or reflected in bathroom mirrors when I brushed my teeth. Always silent, always staring at me with these hollow, accusing eyes. At first, I thought I was having a breakdown. Stress from work, maybe. Too much caffeine. But the sightings became more frequent, more vivid. She'd appear in my peripheral vision during meetings, standing in the corner of restaurants, even sitting in the passenger seat of my car while I drove. My friends thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. That's when I found Dr. Helena Voss, a psychotherapist who specialized in what she called unresolved psychological manifestations. She had this theory that sometimes our minds create visual representations of buried trauma. Ghosts, if you will, but not the supernatural kind. The kind that live in the darkest corners of our psyche. I want to try hypnosis, she told me during our 3rd session. Sometimes the conscious mind blocks memories that are too painful to process. We need to go deeper. I was desperate. I agreed. The hypnosis session took place in her dimly lit office on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Dr. Voss had me lie on a leather couch while she sat beside me, her voice becoming softer and more rhythmic as she guided me into a trance state. Go back, Camilla. Go back to when you were very young. Tell me what you see. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, slowly, images began to emerge like photographs developing in a dark room. I was 4 years old, standing in our old house, the one we moved away from when I was 5. I was in my bedroom, but something was wrong. There were 2 beds, 2 sets of toys, 2 of everything. There's another bed, I whispered, my voice sounding strange and distant even to my own ears. Whose bed is it, Camilla? Emma's. The name came out of my mouth before I even knew I was going to say it. My sister Emma's. But that was impossible. I was an only child. I'd always been an only child. Tell me about Emma, Dr. Voss urged. The memories flooded back like a dam bursting. Emma, my twin sister. We were identical. Same dark hair, same pale skin, same curious eyes that got us into trouble. We did everything together. Played together. Slept in the same room. Shared secrets in our own made-up language that only we understood. Where is Emma now? Dr. Voss asked. The scene shifted. I was still 4, but now I was standing in the hallway outside our parents' bedroom. The door was cracked open, and I could hear my mother crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere primal and broken. She won't wake up, my mother was saying to my father. She won't wake up. I pushed the memory further. Emma had been sick for weeks. Not regular sick, something else. She'd grown thin and listless, spending more and more time sleeping. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. One morning, I woke up, and Emma was in her bed, but she wasn't breathing. What happened after that, Camilla? They took her away. The words felt like razor blades in my throat. And then they told me she never existed. Under hypnosis, I could see it all with terrifying clarity. My parents, consumed by grief and unable to cope with my constant questions about Emma, made a decision. They packed away all her belongings, took down her pictures, and began telling me that Emma had been an imaginary friend, that I'd made her up. Children have vivid imaginations, they'd say when I asked where she went. Emma wasn't real, sweetheart. She was just pretend. They moved us to a new house, a new city, started fresh and slowly, with the combination of their insistence and my young, malleable mind. I began to believe them. Emma faded from my conscious memory, buried so deep that I genuinely forgot she'd ever existed. But she never really left, did she? She'd been trying to reach me all these years, appearing as that mysterious child that haunted my adult life, the sister I'd forgotten, but whose loss had carved a hollow space in my soul that I could never quite understand. When Dr. Voss brought me out of the hypnotic state, I was sobbing uncontrollably. The weight of the recovered memories felt crushing. Not just Emma's death, but the betrayal of having her existence erased, of being gaslit by the two people who should have helped me grieve. I need to call my parents, I said, my hands shaking as I reached for my phone. The conversation was difficult. When I confronted them with what I'd remembered, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, my mother broke down and admitted everything. The death certificate still existed. Emma Rose Mitchell died at age 4 from an undiagnosed neurological condition. They'd thought they were protecting me by helping me forget. But you can't really forget, can you? The mind remembers, even when we don't want it to. I haven't seen the ghost child since that hypnosis session. I think Emma got what she wanted. For me to remember her, to acknowledge that she was real, that she mattered. Maybe that's all any of us really want in the end, to be remembered. Sometimes I wonder what our lives would have been like if she'd lived. Would we have been best friends as adults? Would we have looked exactly the same, or would time have made us different? I'll never know. But at least now I know why I always felt like something was missing. Why I sometimes caught myself setting out 2 cups of coffee or looking for someone who wasn't there. I wasn't losing my mind. I was just missing my sister. The hypnosis experiment. The fluorescent lights in the anatomy lab buzzed overhead as I stared at the pocket watch swinging in Marcus's hand. We shouldn't have been there after hours, but medical school had a way of pushing boundaries, both ethical and temporal. "Just relax, Sarah," Marcus whispered, his voice taking on that practiced cadence we'd learned in our psychology elective. "Let your mind drift." It had started as curiosity. 4 of us, Marcus, Elena, David, and myself, had become fascinated with hypnosis during Dr. Kellerman's lectures on consciousness. We'd read about the untapped potential of the human mind, the vast, unexplored territories of imagination that lay dormant beneath our everyday awareness. What could we unlock if we dared to venture deeper? The watch caught the harsh light, casting dancing shadows across the cadavers that lay covered on nearby tables. I felt my eyelids growing heavy. "That's it," Marcus continued. "Now, I want you to imagine the deepest, darkest place your mind can conjure. Don't hold back. Show us what true horror looks like." My consciousness slipped away like water through fingers. I found myself standing in a hospital corridor that stretched infinitely in both directions. The walls were the color of old bone, and the floor beneath my bare feet felt wet and warm. As I began to walk, I realized the wetness was blood, seeping up through invisible cracks in the linoleum. The doors lining the hallway were numbered, but the numbers made no sense. They appeared to be written in a script that hurt to look at directly, symbols that seemed to writhe and change when I wasn't focusing on them. Behind each door, I could hear sounds, sobbing, screaming, and underneath it all, a rhythmic thudding like a massive heartbeat. I approached the first door and placed my hand on the handle. The metal was ice cold and seemed to burn my palm. When I opened it, I saw myself on an operating table, chest split open, while figures in surgical masks worked with instruments that weren't quite medical tools. They looked up at me with eyes that were too bright, too knowing. "We've been waiting for you," one of them said, and I recognized Marcus's voice beneath the mask. I slammed the door shut and stumbled backward, but the corridor had changed. Now there were windows lining the walls, and through them I could see an operating theater where hundreds of spectators sat in tears, all wearing the faces of people I knew: professors, fellow students, my parents. They were watching as something that might have once been human was dissected on the table below. The thing on the table turned its head toward me and smiled with too many teeth. "Your turn," it whispered, though I was certain I was too far away to hear it. I ran then, my feet slapping against the bloody floor, but the corridor seemed to stretch longer with every step. The doors were opening now on their own, spilling their contents into the hallway. Anatomical models came to life, their plastic smiles and exposed muscles gleaming wet. Skeletons rattled past me, their bones clicking in rhythm with that persistent heartbeat. And then I saw it. At the end of the corridor, a massive door marked with symbols that made my eyes water. The heartbeat was coming from behind it, and I knew with terrible certainty that I had to open it. The handle turned easily in my hand. Behind the door was a vast amphitheater filled with darkness so complete it seemed solid. In the center, suspended by invisible threads, was a beating heart the size of a small building. But it wasn't just any heart. It was covered in eyes, thousands of them, blinking in sequence with each pulse. And all those eyes turned to look at me. "You wanted to see what imagination could create," a voice said. And this time, it was my own voice, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "This is what we really are underneath. This is what we're all thinking about when we cut into those bodies, when we learn about death by studying the dead." The eyes began to close, one by one, and with each closing eye, I felt a piece of my sanity slip away. We are the disease pretending to be the cure. I woke up screaming. The anatomy lab snapped back into focus around me. Marcus was shaking my shoulders, his face pale with concern. Elena and David stood behind him, their expressions a mixture of fascination and horror. Sarah, you're okay. You're back." I looked around wildly, expecting to see blood on the floor, but there was only sterile linoleum. The cadavers lay still under their sheets. Everything was normal. Except for Marcus's eyes. They were too bright, too knowing. "That was incredible," Elena breathed. "The things you were saying, the descriptions. It was like you were really there." "What did you see?" David asked, leaning closer. "Tell us everything." But I was looking at Marcus and I saw something that made my blood freeze. When he smiled, there were too many teeth. "We should do Elena next," he said, and his voice had that same cadence from my vision. "I think she'll show us something even more interesting." I stumbled to my feet, backing toward the door. No, we're done. This was a mistake." "Come on, Sarah," Marcus said, his smile never wavering. "We're just getting to the good part. Besides ... He tilted his head, and for a moment I could swear I heard that rhythmic heartbeat again. "How do you know you've really woken up?" I ran from that lab and never looked back. The next day, I switched out of all my classes with Marcus, Elena, and David. I told myself it was just my imagination. that the hypnosis had simply unlocked some deep-seated fears about medical school, about working with death every day. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm studying in the library alone, I hear that heartbeat again. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I see too many teeth in my smile. The worst part is, I'm starting to wonder if Marcus was right. How do I know I ever really woke up? How does anyone know where consciousness ends and nightmare begins? The human imagination, I learned that night, is capable of creating horrors that make reality seem like a mercy. And once you've seen what lurks in those deep, dark places of the mind, you can never be entirely certain which side of consciousness you're really on. The hypnosis experiment taught us something, all right. It taught us that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again under suggestion. I used to think hypnosis was a joke, something stage performers used to get laughs. I never imagined it could become a waking nightmare. It started during a psychology seminar at the university. A guest speaker, a man named Dr. Adrian Murrell, came to demonstrate the power of suggestion. He had this calm, confident energy. No flashy showmanship, no theatrics, just a deep voice and unwavering eyes. He asked for volunteers. I raised my hand out of boredom more than anything. He guided me through a simple exercise. Breathe in, breathe out. Picture a door in my mind and step through it. Then, everything went blank. When I opened my eyes, everyone in the auditorium was clapping. Someone handed me my phone. They'd recorded me acting like I was a child, then a lion, then laughing uncontrollably. I had no memory of any of it, just darkness, then light. It was funny at first, but that night, as I brushed my teeth, I froze, mid-motion. I remember looking into the mirror, not at myself exactly, but through myself. My reflection seemed delayed, like it blinked a second too late. The next day, I found red marks on my wrist, faint scratches like I'd been digging at my own skin. My roommate asked if I was okay, said I'd been pacing the hallway at 3 a.m., whispering something she couldn't understand. I laughed it off. Sleepwalking, maybe? Stress. But over the next week, things got worse. I'd lose time. Hours would vanish. I'd leave campus, then find myself across town with no idea how I got there. I started finding things I couldn't explain. A subway ticket to a station that doesn't exist. A receipt for a gas station I never visited. A photo on my phone, blurry, of me standing alone in the rain, eyes wide and vacant. Then my neighbor stopped me outside my building. He looked uneasy, said, "You dropped this last night." It was a scarf, bloodstained, torn. I said it wasn't mine. Well, he didn't argue, just backed away slowly. That night, I didn't sleep. I tried to stay awake, but sometime past 2 a.m., I drifted off and dreamt of that door again. But this time, I couldn't move. I stood in front of it, frozen, while something knocked from the other side. Knock, knock, knock. I woke up drenched in sweat, but with dirt under my fingernails. My shoes were wet. I tried to contact Dr. Murrell. The university had no record of him. The number he gave out was disconnected. His name didn't appear online, no LinkedIn, no website, nothing. It was like he never existed, or like he'd hidden himself too well. Now, I see that door every time I blink. When I close my eyes for even a second, I feel that same slow pull, like something is guiding me back inside. Not physically, mentally. And the scariest part? Sometimes I wake up, and I'm not sure if I'm me. I record myself sleeping now. Most nights it's fine, just quiet breathing. But on 3 separate videos, I've stood up, looked directly into the camera, and whispered the same sentence. The door is open.